Okay, if we could please resume our seats and we'll get part two underway. So welcome back, everyone. We now move into open for the Levin retail strategy, and reporting officer David McCorkindale. Welcome, David, and I know you'll be doing introductions too for others.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Nice to be here, and a pleasure to have Carmen Gray, who is the Economic Development Manager at the Horowhenua Company, and who has done a lot of the work on this retail transformation strategy here to help the presentation today. In front of you, I have just delivered a coloured sheet here, which speak to as the presentation goes on. That is essentially the actions and priorities out of the strategy. What I've tried to do there to be a little bit helpful is colour coordinate them, and so the immediate priorities in terms of the first 2 years are all coloured that sort of pale green. The medium term ones are all that purple colour, and where there's long-term actions are sort of the orange or peach colour. So as you're looking through that, or as we're talking about some of the strategic direction, that will help just focus you on, okay, well, what could happen immediately versus what might happen a bit further down the track. So, Levin Retail Transformation Strategy, it forms part of the broader Levin Town Centre transformation work. Obviously, we have the Town Centre strategy, which provided a mandate and a direction around how we're looking to transform the town centre. And this piece of work falls out of that as a key part of how do we continue to make the town centre fit for the future. So in terms of today's presentation, we are looking to present and have already provided by way of pre-reading the draft retail transformation strategy. And today we're here to test whether there are any changes required or gaps that need to be addressed before the strategy is presented for adoption. Depending on the nature of the feedback, how extensive it is, or how radical the changes are, we are aiming to bring the strategy for adoption to the 2nd of September Council meeting. If we get a lot of feedback today and it takes us a bit longer, we'll obviously push that out a bit further. So for us today, success looks like that as elected members and anyone else listening, that you leave understanding why the retail transformation strategy has been prepared, what the draft strategy seeks to address, and what implementation could involve, and that we all leave with an understanding what further changes will be considered before the draft strategy is presented for adoption. So there's primarily two questions that we're looking to ask today as we go through this, and want you to have these in your mind. Ideally, we'll sort of run through the presentation. If there's questions along the way, we can take those, but maybe you let us get them through, and then we'll come back and circle back to these questions. The first one being, is there a level of comfort with the direction of the draft strategy? And the second one being, are there any specific changes or gaps that you're looking for the strategy or expected to see the strategy address that we might need to include or work on ahead of it being presented back to Council for adoption? So in terms of your no-see-do triangle, we're in the do today. We're looking for that direction on this draft strategy. And hopefully, given it was a short strategy, you had the choice of reading the plain version, or there was a design version added to the portal as well. Hopefully you've had a chance to read that and sort of have a good understanding. But we'll step through now a few things about the strategy, and again look to answer those questions at the end. So when we think about the strategy and why we prepared a strategy and what it's trying to address, it's easy to jump to O2L. O2L is happening, the town centre is going to be bypassed, therefore the strategy should be addressing that. And it does pick up on that, and obviously a lot of our work at the moment is driven by the time frame to do with O2L, that essentially 2029 the expressway opens and the town centre will have a different level of traffic going through it, or have a different opportunity. And we know off the back of O2L there's this opportunity to reclaim Oxford Street through the revocation process. So the purpose that road has to serve at the moment in terms of allowing heavy vehicles to move up and down the country, when the new expressway is open, those will no longer have to go through the town centre, and so there is an opportunity to repurpose that. We also, though, it's really important that we have a growing population, and so as the population grows, and Levin being that key town centre for the district, we want to continue to ensure that the town centre is fit for purpose and does serve and meet the needs of the growing population here. We also are aware that there's changes in consumer expectations in terms of what they're looking for in their town centres, and so here presents an opportunity to again be addressing that as we package all these things together. And then overall, I guess we've through the feedback, and Carmen will speak to some of the extensive work she did to get feedback to understand more about our town centre. And you yourselves have mentioned it from time to time as well, in terms of that sense of our town centre. Feedback like it's tired, you can do with the paint job, it's a bit run down, there's empty shops. Those are all things which present an opportunity to address and to enhance. And so this strategy is looking to address a range of those things. And as we speak to some of the strategic direction, we'll see how this comes together to provide a town centre that hopefully continues to be fit for the future. And it's not just for the visitors or the passers through, this is a town centre for our community. And so I'll now hand over to Carmen, who, as I indicated, did a lot of the behind the scenes work, I guess, and allowing us to get to this place where we can write a fairly succinct strategy that's been really well informed by a significant amount of evidence work to identify, well, what is it that's going to make a difference, and what are those steps and actions that we can take along with the measures and things that we can know whether or not we're being successful in the actions that we're taking.
That button there?
That button.
And that button there?
Yes.
Cheers for that, David. That's getting feedback. So first, we deliberately didn't want to start with solutions. We actually spent 6 months understanding the town centre. So that meant that I deliberately looked at a whole lot of data that we gathered. So we looked at the demographics, we looked at the spending data, and that's specifically looking at what people were spending within our town centre and also what people from district were spending outside the town centre. We completed a full business audit, which I've actually subsequently done a second time, so we've got that looking at every 6 months. We talked with and surveyed the residents, the retailers, and also the property owners to identify what it is that they wanted from the town centre. We looked at research on the future of retail, and then we reviewed what was happening in other town centres in New Zealand. So I looked at what was happening in the likes of Rangiora, Cambridge, Pokeno, Ngaruawahia, Huntly, Timaru, Masterton. Key towns, rural towns that are service centres that had been bypassed. I also looked at international examples, specifically in Australia, which had been bypassed. And then whilst I was on a personal trip into the UK, I went looking at small towns over there that had been bypassed through some of their significant roading. And then we tested those findings against what we were hearing locally. And what that did was give me confidence that one survey or two surveys or one report, it wasn't just what we were finding individually, it was the same themes kept appearing, regardless of where we looked. And so by the time we started writing the strategy, the priorities were actually starting to emerge and becoming obvious as what we wanted to look at. So there were 4 key directions or messages that came through consistently. First, people actually value Levin. This wasn't a story about people writing Levin off. They actually use the town centre, they rely on it, but they want more reasons to visit once they're finished doing their errands. 80% of residents visit Levin daily, and 79% of the total district spend is actually from people in the district. Secondly, businesses actually, they want to embrace this opportunity. It just needs to be de-risked. They're not saying Levin can't succeed. They're saying they want confidence that everyone is moving in the same direction. And thirdly, why O2NL is a major change. It's not actually the reason we're having this conversation. A lot of these opportunities existed before the bypass. O2 now simply makes acting now much more important. And finally, there is no one magic answer. Everything's pointed towards lots of smaller practical improvements working together rather than waiting for one transformational project. So when we put all that together, we identified 3 strategic directions or 3 priorities. The first is about building a stronger business mix. Not chasing every national retailer, but supporting our local businesses and encouraging investment that fills the gaps. Hospitality was a key theme that popped up here. The second is about creating more activity, giving people more reasons to come and visit. Events, activities, hospitalities, things happening throughout the year, stuff to do, fun stuff to do and regularly. And third is continuing to improve the places themselves, making the town centre somewhere that's attractive, easy to move around, and is fun and enjoyable to spend time in. So these 3 themes actually all reinforce themselves. Better businesses attract people, more activity gives people reasons to stay longer, and better places encourage them to linger more. So if we're looking at what a successful Levin town centre looks like, this slide actually really brings it back to the vision for the strategy. We're trying to create a place or a town centre that people choose to meet, to eat, to shop and spend time in. That sounds simple, but it's actually quite a significant shift. It's moving Levin from being somewhere people come to get something done to where they actually want to choose to spend more time. If over the next 5 to 10 years we see a stronger mix of businesses, more people in the town centre, greater confidence to invest and a stronger sense of pride in Levin, we'll know we're moving towards that vision. So everything that follows in the strategy is really about answering one question. How do we give more people reasons to meet? How do we give them more reasons to eat, to shop and to spend time? Is that working?
So the strategy breaks those aspirations down into 3 strategic directions. The first one being rebalancing the retail and service mix. The second one, consistent activation and events. And the third one, the public realm and environment. And a lot of this is about that idea of moving from convenience to experience. So as Carmen said, those 3 come together. The greater or rebalancing the retail and service mix brings that greater choice. The activation and events that brings energy and activity into the town centre, our public spaces and that environment, when done in an attractive and accessible, well-connected way, those 3 all contribute to an overall experience that improves perception, supports investment, improves business confidence, and ultimately makes a better town centre for our community. And so now we're just going to step through each of those 3 strategic directions, talk just a little bit more, go into a couple more layers around what's trying to be achieved there, what are we trying to address, and then we'll speak to how the strategy does in terms of, well, we sort of know where things are now, but what could a future state look like? And it's at that point I'll sort of bring us back to the actions as well, and we can see what's sort of captured when we're talking about what would make a difference in that space. So if we take this first one, rebalancing the retail and service mix, and again, building on what Carmen said, a lot of this is about creating that greater variety, having that stronger mix of businesses, particularly supporting existing businesses to be able to adapt and grow. And I know in a previous conversation that was something you raised, is something what's been done for the existing businesses. Is this all just about attracting new? So certainly not the case. This has existing businesses have such a key role. Yes, there'll be some additional ones that we want to try and attract, particularly where we identify gaps, but helping those existing ones thrive, expand, grow, adapt is going to be a really important part of this as well. We know as a district we do leak in some of those discretionary categories, so people speak about having to go outside Levin for things like apparel, their specialty retail, and also hospitality. So that constant thing we often hear is, if we really want to go for a nice dinner out, or we've got friends here, where do I take them? I'm quite limited. So often they travel that little bit further to get that experience. We know that professional services and convenience retail play an important role in generating activity. And part of the challenge has been, and something we need to continue to think about, is having suitable facilities for businesses to expand or to establish. So in terms of a future state and what that could look like, it's if done well, some of the things we would like to be moving towards is having a broader and more balanced mix of retail, hospitality, services and activities. That we get much better at adapting and responding to changing expectations. We see that new investment does come and address some of the gaps, that some of the vacancies that we've got in the town centre are reduced, that the businesses complement one another, and we've seen some great examples of that, where certain businesses either co-locate or by virtue of one being here, it sort of supports another being here. We become a more compelling destination, and obviously there is a concern, is the flash highway going around us. Will there still be a reason for people to stop here? Yep, we want some people to stop, but we also want to make this a great place for locals too. So it's not just about being a destination for others. And ultimately, we want to be able to meet those everyday and discretionary needs locally. So give people less reasons for having to go south or having to go north to get the things that they actually need, or when they have that discretionary spend. And so the actions on this page, again, set out in three levels of priority. So some things that we'd look to target in the first 2 years, some things that we'd see in the medium term, sort of 3 to 5, and then some of those that are longer term, 5+. And so what you'll see there, we've identified some actions. You'll see that alongside those, there's the role of council, and in some cases that changes throughout the actions. So we've got somewhere where they're an enabler or a partner, or we may be a deliverer or an advocate. What I think you'll pick up as you go through the actions, though, is a lot of these are already things that we've touched on in the town centre strategy. They're things that don't necessarily require a whole lot of additional investment. They can be done as part of some of our existing programs in some case. But what has, I guess, been missing is having a real intentionality about that. So we've seen some good examples of where vacant premises have been used, whether it be for temporary or pop-up uses, certainly trying to improve the appearance or give those a bit of life and vibrancy. Looking at, just not going through each of these in particular detail, but looking at how can we get a better coordinated town centre business network that then allows that sort of collaboration between businesses and property owners. How can that lead to then supporting business-led initiatives? So a key part of the strategy that we'll speak to is it can't all just sit with councils to do everything, then it will only achieve so much. We definitely want other, particularly local businesses, playing a role in this as well. The final one in the green box here around developing and maintaining an investment prospectus. That's a piece of work which, again, we're working with Horowhenua Company on. It's we're looking at a broader prospectus, but certainly see a piece there in the town centre that starts to identify those gaps. So it also speaks to the opportunities, what attracts people here, what helps tell that story of the opportunities that exist. Moving on to the second strategic direction, the one around consistent activation and events. So in this space here, we're trying to identify and give people more reasons to stay and to spend time and to spend longer in the town centre. So reasons that go beyond the transactional town centre visits where people are sort of making their errands or just coming in to buy that thing. So part of this focus is having that consistent program of activity, starting to get regular things happening at regular times. Some of that might be seasonal, but things that help support local businesses, things that help increase foot traffic, things that help improve people's perception of the town centre. Ultimately, we're trying to broaden the timeframes of which and when people visit the town centre. So it's quite heavily focused between certain hours of the day at the moment, but with summer activation and events that can start to lead people spending more time in the evenings or in the weekends with the right activities. And look, there's a whole myriad of examples across the country, the world, of where some of these are done quite low cost. Often they involve temporary uses of spaces, things that change the way people use and think about the space in their town centre, trying to bring in a level of activity, vibrancy, colour, live activity, give reasons for people to stop and spend time rather than simply passing through the town centre. If we think about that future state of how these things might contribute, what we might see is a regular rhythm of activities, see more markets and events, promotions, community initiatives that give and create reasons for people to visit beyond their everyday errands, and a town centre that's well used through the week, including evenings and weekends. And so one of the things that we are really conscious of and will be soon planning to lean into is how do we create that sort of annual program of town centre events and activations. So working with our community development team, really bring them into the town centre program and say, well, what are those things that as a council we can help enable or facilitate or even deliver, and where are those things that we can perhaps support businesses where they might want to have business-led sort of promotions or initiatives that are bringing people into the town centre. But the key word in this is consistent. If it just happens once and never happens again, it might be a great thing, but we want to get to the stage where it feels like a program, feels like there's a rhythm. People can start to think, oh, okay, that time of the year, that place Levin, they always have that, let's make sure we go there. And you'll think of places around the country where you'll know a particular place for maybe a particular market or a particular event that they have a time of the year. And there's those things that we want to start bringing in through here. Some other things within this one here, particularly those immediate actions, is, as we've talked about previously, reviewing our policies and bylaws, those things that might unintentionally limit the things that we might want to see that act more, which could help with the activation in our town centre space. And so we've talked about some of those things that, again, sort of as part of a work program, as we start to look at our bylaws and understand where are those things that could limit or might be able to further facilitate. Turning to the third and final strategic direction, this one is around the public realm. And so this is where we're talking about things that contribute to people's experience and perception of the town centre. Like I said in my opening remarks, the feedback along the way and right throughout the time I've been working on the town centre, it's some fairly consistent feedback that we get around people's perception of the town centre, from an appearance, a safety, whether they say it needs a paint job, whether they say it needs a tidy up, whether they point out the things that are broken or aren't fixed, whether they point out the empty shop. There's a range of things which people sort of go into that deficit mindset, see the negative, but that all shades and influences their perception of the town centre. And often they remember, there's often people who speak about it and I guess days gone by of how they remember it, and it's often sort of with a brighter and more vibrant sort of image and positive tone. We know that through in the space here, one of the big opportunities Horowhenua does provide us through revocation is that opportunity of how do we reshape Oxford Street, how does that have a different form of function going forward. One at the moment has to cater for heavy traffic, but in the future there's an opportunity to look at how does that change from a parking and from a pedestrian experience in our main street. And it's not just about doing this all to make it look better or just for appearance's sake. This is often, these things are things that actually contribute to getting the conditions and settings right that help attract investment, improve business confidence, and ultimately we know that these things, when done well, also influence customer or visitor behaviour as well in terms of how they spend time and what they do and how they treat and the pride they take in the town centre. So if we think about the future state here, again, if these things were done well, then we would be moving towards having an attractive, welcoming, easy to move around Levin town centre, our public spaces, and we know we've got some key ones just on the edges of the town centre. They'll be well connected. Those key destinations are linked in a way that encourages people to not just drive to one and park there and then maybe drive to the other and park there. It gives them reason to explore and move and spend time in spaces in between. That parking, walking, cycling, future public transport support access to the town centre, and ultimately a town centre that creates a positive first impression. And so just two in the immediate short-term priorities there. One is around improving the wayfinding and connections between key destinations, and another is continuing with that support those planned improvements that strengthen the town centre amenity, presentation and usability. So it's a short strategy. We've taken a bit of time just to highlight and emphasise, I guess, the three strategic directions, draw some attention to the priorities. What we are aware of is that you can have a strategy and it can look great, it can be pretty, and it can sit there on a shelf, but nothing changes. So the implementation and the monitoring of it become a really key part of this. And so, like I said earlier, if it simply all sits with council, that will only lead to success to a certain level. We certainly want it to be something where others contribute and buy into and play a part in. But we also want to be checking and understanding that actually the steps we're taking, the moves we're making, are actually taking us in those directions that we want to go, those future states that we've described. And so within the strategy, we identify a range of measures and things that we could monitor to, I guess, check the success and the progress. And a lot of those, again, just involve us sort of collecting some extra information as we do certain things, maybe adding some extra questions into our surveys, getting that sort of information. There's a few that go a bit further in terms of, okay, if we want to understand things like pedestrian counts or how long people are spending, there's perhaps some additional data or information that we might need to get to be able to build that or build those measures. But hopefully, that's given you a good scene setting for what the strategy is about, why we're working on it, why we've prepared it, what it's seeking to address, and what sits behind a fairly succinct strategy is actually a fairly hefty number of reports that have helped us get to this stage of having a confidence that these three areas are the areas that will help us move the town centre in that way that is going to, I guess, be the town centre that we want for the future. And so we'll turn it over to you now in terms of just going back to those questions that we highlighted at the start. Is there a level of comfort? We'd love to hear from you. Is there a level of comfort with the direction of the draft strategy? And also, are there any particular gaps or changes that you think the strategy might need to include or consider before it's presented to Council for adoption?
Go, Joe.
Oh, thank you, David and Carmen, and thanks for the work that's gone into this and the conversations that have been had to inform this. Really appreciate it. I just wanted to do a quick check in. My first question, and I'll probably jump back in with some more, is in terms of the strategy's great, but are the right levers there in terms of has there been some consideration of any kind of potential regulatory challenges? Like, I'm thinking about a changing demographic, a changing time. We've got quite an outdated bylaw about dogs in the town centre that I know was put in place when there was an issue with kind of gangs in town and vicious dogs and things like that. But at the moment, you can't sit outside a cafe and have a coffee with your pooch in tow, and we know that that's the way people move and shake these days. They take their dog out for a coffee. So I just want to check, and also is our local alcohol policy, like if we got the right levers in place to make sure we're enabling this kind of a vision. So I just want to make sure that we've linked everything up.
So at the moment, I couldn't say we do have all those things exactly at the right settings that need to help us there, which is why the second action in terms of the consistent activation and events, the second action is around reviewing policies and bylaws and operational practices that may unintentionally limit activation, hospitality, events and public space use. So we know there's a piece of work in there where we want to go through those, we'll call them the regulatory mechanisms, I guess, and understand, well, where are these going to create a rub, where might that prevent actually what we're trying to work towards, and inevitably there will be some things that will be coming to council saying we think these are things that we should be changing if this is the aspiration for the town centre. So whether that be within the local alcohol policy or whether it be within the I think it's the land transport bylaw, there'll be a range in there that we basically need to get across, and so that's a piece of work which hopefully with some support for the strategy, but we were already had identified that as a piece of work and a work stream that we were looking to get onto a bit later this year to understand and hopefully be able to start changing some of those settings.
Did you want to have a follow-up or not? Did you have others or not? Yeah, look, the content of the strategy is pretty good, reads very well and flows well. And the one thing that did just stand out for me was that it's silent on, and perhaps deliberately, or maybe it's assumed, around this issue of that with O2NL, we're likely to see other retail centres pop up along the corridor, or, for example, the likes of Tararua Road, where you could end up with some big box and other kind of retail development. And that's my sense is that that's a good thing, and that's inevitable. But the strategy kind of doesn't tackle that head on and say, well, these are kind of some of the measures or mitigations that are directed particularly at that, trying to retain or attract the right businesses into the town centre as opposed to those, or the impact of those other kind of potential retail growth. And it may be that it's not the right document to deal with that in, but it feels like it's kind of like it's like an elephant in the district, and somehow we kind of need to speak to it, but in a kind of positive and optimistic, but also realistic kind of way. So I don't have the answer. It just stood out to me.
Yeah, thank you for raising that. And it's certainly what you're raising isn't something that we have forgotten about or not conscious of. If I was trying to pin it where and look, we can review whether or not we want to have a more overt action around that. Probably where I'd see that slotting in and some broader work which might lead to what you're suggesting, where we are sort of quite overt around we actually want this over here, we want this here, and we wanted to retain this, or we're going to actively seek and chase this, is under the second action under the first strategic direction. So developing a town centre business adaptation and attraction program focused on supporting existing businesses to respond to changing conditions and attracting investment that broadens the overall town centre offer. So possibly with a couple of extra words which just speaks to that realistically we don't expect big box to end up in the town centre, so it goes somewhere else, but we don't want that somewhere else to then become the new town centre with the kiss of death on this town centre. And so there's some settings that you need to get right there to try manage and mitigate that, so that you can have two thriving things. They're just known for different purposes and they complement as opposed to compete.
Yeah, I think that sounds sensible. And so maybe it's just the word planning or something in there that I don't know. It's kind of just signaling to that there is still some levers, I think was the word that Councillor Mason used, like levers and buttons that can be pressed to perhaps encourage, and not direct, but encourage certain things to happen in certain places, or protect the kind of character that you want to retain in the town centre, or protect's again the wrong word, but you get the gist. Thanks.
Katrina.
Lovely to see you, Carmen. Thank you so much, David, and to both of you back there. Thank you for all the work that's gone into this. I know that there's been a huge amount of research in putting all of this together. I just have a couple of questions. I suppose following on from Councillor Jennings, my question was about Tara Ika and how their commercial centre would work with our town centre. You've kind of answered that, and I'm glad to see that that's on the radar. Then, in terms of safety, so with my safety hat on as a security forum, I'm sure this has been thought of, but I keep thinking about what we're hopefully planning, which sounds amazing. But with that, obviously, comes lighting, extra toilets, more transport, policing, alcohol management, noise, all of that kind of stuff is kind of what you alluded to. And I'm hoping, and I'm sure it has, that all of those things have been considered along with that progressive growth and how that can keep up with that and how that changes. Then in terms of the public realm and the environment, I'm so excited about that. That's one thing I'm super, super passionate about, because I know from speaking to residents, the one thing that they're really hopeful and excited about in terms of this is having a place for them to be able to meet and hang out. It's not all economic. It's also about community outcomes. And so how they're going to sit and have chats and where they're going to sit. And under that for me, which I don't know if it has been thought of, is youth. So where is our youth identity in this? And I'm great that you're going to answer that. And where do they fit in? Especially 15 to 24-year-olds. What have we thought of in terms of them? And then the last question was the connection between Levin as an identity and this as a project. So our greater identity, which we're still trying to figure out, in terms of our iwi, in terms of our coastal, in terms of our rural, in terms of who we have within the community. How does that broader identity of Levin fit in to where we're going and what we think Levin should or is going to be?
I did actually forget to mention that I spoke with youth, because it was quite, through the surveys, we realised that we'd missed the youth vote. So we went and spoke through the youth council, and we went and spoke and picked up feedback from the colleges. What the youth were asking for were those places to meet, eat and play. They wanted a timeout and a trampoline park. Literally. And public transport featured there significantly, because they still want to go to the bigger cities and have that access, but come back home. So that is, it's been captured within all those three strategies. So we did speak with youth. The Levin identity, I think I'll pass back to David on that one.
Yeah, I think there was a time and place where and the original town centre strategy speaks to identity. I think what we're coming to understand as we go through this is maybe the worst thing we could do is try and nail down an identity today and then try force the town and our community to be that. So I think it's probably better to maybe consider ourselves like sort of going through teenage years, where I think we're going to evolve and adapt as the town grows and as we grow and mature and things change. So we have been intentional about not saying this is the town identity and this is what it has to be and we're only going to be this. It's going to be something which there's certainly things which we know we want to be and we're working towards, but I think we all need to appreciate we're going to be on this evolution, I guess, and so that will become more defined, more clear, I think, as we go. The other two questions, if I caught them all, Tareka, that obviously was a specific consideration. There was recognition when designing that master plan that for that number of households, it made sense not to require every single house to have to drive over to the side of town to get their basic needs, but we didn't want to have two competing town centres. So there's some specific settings in the town centre district plan and the master plan that basically limit the footprint, size and so on of that commercial area to ensure that it stays as basically a centre that serves the neighbourhood, a neighbourhood centre, rather than a town serving a town centre. So comfortable that that thinking has taken place and that there are appropriate settings and mechanisms there. You asked a question which maybe I saw it more as a comment than a question, but and I probably can't give you that absolute certainty that whilst we've thought about things about what is needed in the future and will we have everything in place that keeps up with progressive growth like the policing and so on, the reality is no, we haven't understood exactly what's needed in 5 years time / 10 years time. Again, I think we'll see some things go fast, some things take longer, and this will continue to be something which we don't just do it and then step away and watch. It will be something we continue to monitor and evolve as we go. And so having an awareness of that is, as you say, important. But I don't think we necessarily are seeking this strategy or council necessarily to solve all those things at this time. So policing comes in different ways. Yes, we have enforcement officers and things like that. There's obviously policing around national policing, I guess, in terms of what they have in Levin, and as the population grows, no doubt they'll consider the numbers and things like that. But in the broader context of safety, certainly that is a key feature and a key consideration in the town centre, and I'm pleased to speak to a meeting we held as recently as last week with the Crime Camera Trust, and obviously looking to, whilst that was about a particular site, we're now looking to meet and certainly get them involved in the town centre program, because we think there's some real opportunities if they understand the work that's happening, the things we're trying to do, but as well as some of the developers who we work with. I think if they understood the vision and what's needed and what might contribute to safer communities as well, then I think there's some opportunities there. So cameras are only one part of safety. We've touched on lighting, things like access and all that are also part of making it safe and creating that positive experience and environment for people in the town centre.
Joe.
I think Sam mentioned I think you said the elephant in the room or something, and I'm kind of feel like I'm always the Grinch about this. And yes, the public realm environment, and there was a statement you had in there, the town centre having a positive first impression, and in the other work that I do outside of council, I get to talk to a lot of people, and a lot of people perhaps returning to town after they haven't been here for some time, and you hear bits and pieces of feedback, some of it positive, and nice to be back in Levin, but some of the things that I've been told is that the place lacks vibrancy, that it's congested to park in the main street, that it looks sometimes a bit sort of empty or uninviting, a bit grimy, and I know we stopped cleaning the main street, and that's always been an issue I've talked about. People have commented that the planting, that the Riverstone planting areas that have kind of got tired or haven't been maintained and looked after. So it is a bit of an interest of mine, and I think a vibrant town centre, a bit like what Carmen said, and I really appreciate that. I spend a lot of my time, if I'm away, looking at what town centres look like, how inviting they are, how good it feels to be there. So I'm just wondering, do we wait till the strategy's in place, or do we, like I know the planting's looking a bit better in the main street, but do we have to wait to have a town centre strategy that talks about vibrancy and that people touch and feel and see right now that it's a nice place to be in? Can we kind of do? You've got something there that talks about develop a vacant premises activation program. I'm not sure what that means, but temporary pop-ups or temporary uses pop-up. But is there some intention that we won't wait for O2NL to come? We'll get on and get started.
Yes, very mindful. You've done a great job of describing the current state of the town, and so hence why there is merit in having a strategy. Do we need to wait for a strategy to do those things? Not necessarily. I think what the strategy does is certainly gives us, with council support, mandate and direction, I guess, to actually look at these things and to take action. We know that there probably has been some hesitation around how much do you do or invest in Oxford Street around planting and things like that if it's all going to change in the future. And I think there's a balance there. Obviously you don't want to overinvest, but you also don't want 5 years of feeling like it's run down and things. And one of the things we have, I guess, been really keen, and why I think council's essentially given us sort of this window of make good progress in the town centre, is come day one when the bypass opens, people aren't necessarily going to come back to see the progress you made. They're going to probably make decisions based on sort of the time leading up to that of actually, it was actually quite a positive place, or it was quite nice, or they'd made some real positive changes. If they're driving busy along the expressway, not knowing any of that we're doing after it was open, then we'll probably miss that opportunity. So I do believe that there is certainly strong case for why you would start to get onto some of those things, finding that sweet spot, because you can picture the social media post or the question that we suddenly do something nice in the main street and someone will inevitably question, well, why is council spending money on that when it's only going to be something else in a few years' time? So the reality is that revocation in terms of Oxford Street, quite limited about what we can do before the new road opens. So even on day one, Oxford Street will still look pretty similar to what it does at the moment, and so it will take some time after that. So it's not 5 years, it's even longer. So hence why it makes more important to do something. Yeah.
Councillor, could I just offer some advice here? Because I, without being the Grinch back to the table, I just want to remind the table that during the long-term plan, we significantly reduced operational expenditure in our parks and property budgets, and we also saw some reductions in levels of service off the back of our dear friends from New Zealand Transport Agency, and how that kind of shows up in what maybe the current government would describe as core services of council. And so while we don't need to wait for a strategy to do some stuff, we do need money to do some stuff. And one of the things that council might want to think about is what's your appetite to allocate Levin Town Centre transformation money to operational maintenance work, even though it might look a bit better and feel a little bit better, and what assurance do you need about how that might show up in long-term budgets as you go into the long-term plan process. And so possibly just a question I think would be helpful for officers to hear from the table on before we finalise the strategy. Does the strategy currently articulate for you as elected members where your priorities are? If you had a pot of money and you could invest in it, does it articulate for you that your first preference would be that investment is in those assets or services that you as a council are currently responsible for?
Thanks. You set up. I'm glad I actually went after you, because that was what you talked about was the 2 points exactly that I was going to make, which is that under strategic direction 3, an immediate priority action, I'd love an action there that talked to council reviewing its levels of service in the town centre and considering investment options for stuff, like as part of the capital program, because it sets a clear, we're going to do it as part of the long-term plan, but here it just sets up a real clear decision point for us that we need to consider what our role and how we can do it. And the other point was, which you introduced, was absolutely we've got town centre budget for capital works. We should absolutely be utilising some of that for short term now for operational stuff where it makes sense to do so. You know, in the next 9-10 months, acknowledging that then we can then make some more deliberative operational levels of service decisions going forward. But while we're not utilising that town centre fund for capital works, I absolutely think we should. I mean, we're talking quite small amounts of money to go and do some water blasting, to do some what do they call it? Urban cleansing. No, urban. I think it's called urban. It is called urban cleansing. Yeah. So Anyway, that's enough for me.
Clint.
Lush planting.
We just Noel, if it's okay.
Yeah,
Clint, welcome.
Oh, thank you. Look, I support increasing the budget for gum removal from chairs and stuff like that. So I think good challenge from Monique. Look, I've always support the general direction. I like the way the strategy ties in quite nicely with a car parking strategy, a continuation of that stop, stay, spend type message. Couple of points that I've got here are not so much questions, but maybe some reflections you can take away and think about. But the strategy rightly identifies population growth and Horowhenua's opportunities, but there are other broader factors that could influence outcomes, including ongoing growth in online retail, changing consumer spending patterns, economic downturns and business confidence. So I wondered whether that could be brought to the fore, because Carmen, I'm pretty much sure that all the data and the stuff you've got in behind the scenes is just sitting there, that maybe a short section on key risks and assumptions could be brought forward to capture what, you know, one of some of those aspects could be that would end up affecting success of this particular strategy. The report note several times, and David, you spoke about it too, around the leakage, and identifies retail leakage as a key issue for Levin. So my question is whether there's enough specificity within the strategy around where the leakage is occurring and which sectors present the greatest opportunity for us. So if we're intending to attract investment and support business development, understanding the most significant gaps, that could help ensure efforts are targeted to areas where there's the greatest potential economic return. Even just keeping it really high level around the major leakage categories could assist elected members and future investors in understanding that more clearly. I just had some feedback as well on the measures of success, or not quite measures of success, but the measures around the actions. They currently focus on output such as events, held activations undertaken, improvements delivered, which are important, but they don't necessarily tell us whether the strategy is genuinely improving the economic performance or attractiveness of the town. And I kind of wondered whether there's an opportunity to put greater emphasis on measures that demonstrate the difference being made over time. So looking at reduction in retail leakage, increase in discretionary spending in town, improvements in public perception, or greater business confidence. So it's more just maybe have a look at some of those success measures and see if you can incorporate. And the last sort of thing, I think it's the last thing, sorry, as I scroll down, I was quietly surprised around the limited recognition of tourism opportunity. And I think it's kind of hidden in there, but it didn't jump out and slap me in the face that was potentially an important strategy. So I think there's an opportunity to more explicit recognising the role visitors, tourists and day trippers could play in the future success of the town centre. I'm not suggesting the strategy becomes a tourism strategy, but I wonder whether there was scope to better acknowledge the visitor economy as a contributor to the town centre, vitality and the resilience of it. So I know there's a lot there, and I'm happy to send you an email, Carmen and David, and you can take it for what it is.
Thank you. That'd be helpful. Some useful things, a couple that we have thought about, but look forward to that email and we'll look to take on board those things.
Bernie.
Thank you, David. Yeah, look, it's a good start, the strategy. I think, in fact, the most I took out of this was the last item on those, that action plan for the next 2 years. I remember a couple of years ago, David, or a few years ago now, we developed that prospectus, if you like, in terms of what was based on that Australian town that we had. And I was pretty impressed with that because it showed what could be possible for those investors that want to come to town. Because the reality is market forces will dictate what businesses come to the town and whether they want to invest there. Currently, we have landlords and business owners who don't have any pride in this town whatsoever because most of them aren't local. They're owner-operators from outside and have managers sitting in their stores or service centres and don't have any ownership or relationship to the town. How we change that, I think, is by creating the environment and the culture that actually sort of wants people to come here. We're going to have to change the fact that we're not going to be a traffic orientated town. We're going to have to create an environment where people want to come here. And how we do that is the question that I have. So to try and attract the investment that we need to try and do that is we're going to have to change some mindsets and perception around what people actually think of the town. And that's not going to be easy. So a more visual, aspirational type of view of what the town could look like even would, I think, be, or that prospectus type thing would, I think, be go a long way to go to do that. As for leakage, we've had leakage in this town as long as I've been here. It's not going to change. We cannot compete with Palmy or Paraparaumu. They've got far more to offer than what we can do, but we have to create something that's a little bit different that causes people to come here. I can remember the days when they put buses on locally for people to travel outside of town. Couldn't believe it. But hopefully those days are over. But yeah, it's about creating that sort of sense of pride in your community that people want to come here.
as for the elephant in the room about, I hope we get to the stage, Sam, of actually attracting big box retail. If we're any good, that will actually be a positive for the town, because it'll stop some of that leakage and will attract other businesses because of it. If you don't do that, we'll only become somewhat like a lot of other smaller provincial towns around the country, which are quite frankly dying. So we've got this window of opportunity to actually create something. Hopefully, I'm hoping that we can at least do something from day one. David, I'm hoping that there's at least a plan of what the place will actually be looking like. It might not happen immediately, but a strong sense of where we want to go and how we want to do it. That'll do for now. Thanks.
And Nola.
Thank you. I am going back to the original question. I'm reasonably happy with the whole plan and the priority actions. Just with the printout that you gave us, while it's implicit throughout the entire document, the strategic directions only uses the word grows once. And so we're all about growth and everything like that. I'm just saying, I know it's implicit in everything we're doing, but we don't actually talk about it, which leads into what Councillor Jennings said and Councillor Mason, and that's so that it's just, I think there might be some places where you could add a bit more the words about talking to the growth that is wanted and planned, which is also an outcome which has to be taken into consideration with this plan. Does that make sense?
Thank you. So the two key questions, one was around the level of comfort for the strategy as presented today, and the second was whether there were any gaps or challenges, and both of those have been addressed. I just want to give the opportunity, if there's anyone who has not spoken yet who would like to contribute. Hello, Mike.
I was just sitting here thinking about whether I have something to say about this or not. I love the optimism. Really, I do. But I'm left feeling or thinking that does our ambition exceed our ability? Because the kind of changes we're talking about wanting to happen here, especially in a retail or small business environment, from my experience, are driven from the ground up. You cannot compel a landlord with an empty building to do anything with it they don't want to. We don't have that ability to change that. So I do love the optimism, and I really hate to be another Grinch that spoils Christmas or rains on the parade, but I remain sceptical. There are, and when we talk about, what's a new business that's been established because of ONL? The Robert Harris coffee shop, which will be the first coffee stop after ONL in Foxton. And they don't build those just because they think they want to plonk them in a place. They do their research. I'm not saying we shouldn't do this kind of thing. I'm not saying it's not an ambition worth following, but I'm just wanting to put a little bit of realism into it. Yeah, it's driven from the ground up. I don't think, it'd be nice if we did, but I don't think we have that much ability to influence that ground up stuff.
Thank you. David.
Thank you for the challenge. I look forward to trying to show some progress towards it. But pleased that you can see some benefit in having ambition. So from here, thank you for the feedback today. There's certainly some things that we've all looked to tweak and change. Looking, I guess, just for a level of comfort that at the moment I'm feeling the level of changes that we could make in the next week or two and still come to the 2nd of September council meeting. Just sort of looking at no one's having an allergic reaction if we came back that fast. And obviously we do want to get on and start some of these things. Some of them you will have seen in here but also feature somewhere else. So things like the Horowhenua prospectus, that features in the key deliverables as part of the Economic Development Services contract. So that's where we talk about that being completed by December this year. So that's a piece of work that's actually sort of underway in train, and we'll be looking to deliver. I'm not sure we quite answered the question around the vacant shops, so I'll just take an opportunity to do that. Where we have seen that done, we have got some vacant shops in the town centre, and rather than just sitting vacant with a big lease sign in the window, there's a range of things from actually those having a different appearance, so putting other things in the shop windows, information boards, various other things. We have seen examples of where those have actually been leased out for short-term sort of occupations and things like that, so a little pop-up shop or business goes in for a short period of time. So again, just trying to change that sense of, oh, it's a whole lot of vacant shops, so actually, oh, that one's got something in it today for this week or 2 weeks or whatever it might be, or actually, oh, that's got some things happening in the window. So again, all the little steps, we might not be able to fill the shop permanently, and we might not be able to make that landlord do something longer term, but what are those things that we can do? So very much looking at, yes, there's barriers everywhere we look, but looking at what can we achieve, what can we do, what steps could we take that move us closer towards where we want to be.
So thanks very much, David and Carmen. Also acknowledging Andrew and Melissa over there. Thank you for joining us too. We will now adjourn until 4:15. So
David, can I just ask one question? I just want to get so you've heard from David that based on today, we are going to bring a paper to the September meeting, and that's for you to consider the adoption of the strategy. I just want to kind of pull on the threads of some of the feedback I heard, which is, you didn't say it like this, but cool, we have a strategy, then so what? And what's some of the immediate stuff that we can do? Am I reading some of the feedback I've heard today is that in that paper you'd like us to present some options that might see you reallocate some of our town centre transformation money into immediate quick wins around retail improvement for Levin around levels of service? Like, is that some advice you'd like in the paper?
That's the message I thought I heard. Is there anyone who has a view to the contrary? It appears not.
Well, I would just say that I'm interested in having a look at it, but my priority wouldn't be spending money that we would then need to pull out in order to be able to do something else in the future. So it would have to be, for me, something that would stay or that would ultimately be a big,
no regrets spending.
No.
Yeah. Okay. We can offer some light touch advice to that council report.
And Paul?
Just quickly on that, Monique, I think with any of these strategies, like I've been pretty solid today, but I think with any of these strategies, if we can identify some quick wins, at least we start by building momentum, and I think it's an opportunity we've got in front of us today to look at that, so I would support that.
Thank you. 4:15, resume then.